the video thing. Driving me crazy. I've spent 3 days trying to upload a video from last weekend, and it's not there yet. So, I don't know. I'm an accountant, Jim, not a videographer. I don't know. One of my titles in my jobs was global, what was it? Global Information Systems, something. I don't know. It was kind of IT related, and I'm an accountant. And I did have responsibility for all of the accounting systems. But I'm telling you, that was many days ago. And I'm struggling with some of this technology stuff. I think it might be my age. I don't know. But anyway, so I've got another video, and actually I've got a few videos in the hopper. And I guess I'm just going to have to split it apart. So I'm really sorry if you don't like the part 1 and part 2 kind of thing. By the time you see this one, hopefully I'll keep this one short. It won't be one of those. But the others will be out there, we hope. And you will have seen it already. So kind of weird to be filming this one without the other one out there. But just know that I'm trying. More chunk shows in the hopper too. So today we're going to, I'm going to talk to you about some miscellaneous things. And then we're going to talk a little bit about modern folk embroidery. So let's do the miscellaneous first. I want to show you Mabel Teak, and you can see Mabel behind me. Sign up for her is still open. This is, you can see she looks small because she's over my shoulder. She's on pretty good size linen there. I want to say probably a 28 count linen. This is a model that I'm doing for our workshop, and I just picked up a piece of 40 count that I had laying around, and I used 40 count because I wanted to test out the fibers on some of the specialty stitches, because Mabel does have a beautiful rice stitch right here, and then she has some really beautiful eyelets. Let's see if you can get some of that up close. Not that you want to see it that close. I'm terrible at this. I don't so, and then she's got some other eyelets down here, which I think I've done a tiny little row of right there. And then this blank spot over here is queen stitches. This is all queen stitches. So she's got cross stitch, she's got rice stitch, she's got eyelet, she's got a tiny little bit of satin stitch, and bargello. So I've started the bargello at the bottom. You can see that there. And usually I do bargello bottom to top, and I build up. For this one, for some reason, and I'm still going bottom to top with the stitches, but I usually start on the bottom row and I build it up. For this one, I started at the top, and I'm kind of going down, which is no big deal. It's fine. So anyway, this will get finished this weekend, and this will be one of the models for our workshop, our online workshop. And I'm talking about Mabel to you again today, and if I ever get that other video posted, parts 1 and 2, you'll see me talk about her there, because we do still have spots open in the workshop, not a whole lot. I had a certain number of kits that I had, bought materials for our in-person class, and when we had to cancel that, I took it online, and I'm still going to do an in-person class in October, because there's some of you who want to do that. So if you've signed up for that in-person class in October, that's still happening, so don't sweat that. But if you want to do the online class, now's your time to register, I guess is what I'm driving to. Because when I get all of my kits allocated, I'm going to have to close that one down just because of the threads, the silks and stuff. We did have to push it out from June to July because we have 2 Soie d'Alger that are coming from France, which I hope they're here. And they have to get, they come in from France on big cones. I think I understand it, to Access Commodities, who's our distributor here in the U.S., and they pare it down into skeins, and that takes time. And there's a backlog of many things. And I know some of you are waiting on kits from us for Jane Fittis. That's coming in first. So Jane Fittis will come in first. Hopefully by the end of this month, we'll turn around and then we'll get Mabel in and we'll get her out. And so that class is going to happen in July. So I think that helps some of you. Some of you were like, oh, I've got blah, blah, blah for June. And so the reality is it's an online workshop, and you can access those videos and watch it anytime you want to. We'll certainly leave it out there for at least a year, maybe 18 months. So those videos and stuff will be available. I'm probably going to teach it again. I'm going to try to teach it again. I will tell you, this has been a pleasure to stitch. So I've just really enjoyed stitching this. So much so that I'm going to stitch it again on the larger count linen. So it'll be more close to the same size as the antique. But we've got this available in 32 count, 36 count, and 40 count. And the cool thing about Mabel is that if you choose to do the 32 count, you've got enough silk in the silk pack that comes with it. You don't need any extra. You will use 2 strands, but she's such a sweet little lassie that you don't need a whole nother kit. You'll be fine with what you've got. I've not even made a dent in my silk to stitch this, and I'm almost done. I did have to, so, as I suspected, which is why I wanted to do this, I had to jump over to the 103 for the over 1 name and eyelets. So there's that, but I am on 40 count. So 32 count, you won't have to do that. You won't have to do that on 36 count. The swatch actually will be fine. But the 40 count, you'll have a spool of 103 in there for you. So yeah, so that's been fun. It's been a joy to stitch, so much so, like I said, that I want to do it again, which is pretty cool. So that's Mabel. I wanted to share her with you and just remind you to go out there and get signed up. She's $100 for the online class. That's like crazy inexpensive. That covers the cost. I hope it covers the cost of the materials because I had to add some things in there. And that's really it. And the cool thing that we're doing with Mabel online is we're giving you a little doodle cloth, and we've got a little in-house design that we took some elements from Mabel and created using the specialty stitches so that you can practice, because the queen stitch you want to practice a little bit. And so we're sending you a little hoop because it's smaller than your normal. A lot of people have this 8.5-inch fanny frame hoop. So we're sending you a smallish hoop so that you can do your little piece. And then I will also illustrate how to finish that little piece. And I will also show you how to lace Mabel, because that was part of our original course in-house, is that I was going to show you how to lace Mabel at the end. And so using some linen thread from Londonderry linen, which also comes from Access Commodities. I love linen thread. It's great for finishing, fantastic for finishing. And then it's also good for lacing. Lacing samplers, because you're using linen thread, or any stitching. I use it for everything. I use it for little smalls that I'm making into, and you'll see me do it with the small that we finished for this one. I lace a lot of things. If I'm worried about getting something centered, I lace it because it's so much easier to shift it around a little bit. I haven't used that sticky board stuff since I want to say the 80s, when I first started stitching. I don't like it, and I know it's quick and easy, and if you want to use it, that's great. I don't really use that. I'm not afraid to use acid-free artist tape to hold something down. It's not on my stitching. I've never undone anything that had truly acid-free artist tape that was a problem. But I don't like to use that either because I don't like to have to reposition it. So I'm not afraid to use it because of its quality. I just don't like to use it because I don't like to have to reposition it. So pretty much almost everything I finish, I lace, just because it's quick, it's easy, and I can shift it. And that's the cool thing about lacing, is that you can get it on there, and if you need to move it a little bit, it's super easy to do because you've got a little movement in there. You can shift things around. So I'll show you my version of how to lacing. There's a lot of lacing out there, and you can certainly watch somebody else's in addition. But we promise it to you, so we're going to bring it to you, and I'm going to do it with the linen thread. Again, I love that linen thread. I use it for all kinds of finishing because it's very strong. You can pull it, you can yank it if you need to. If you're doing something that's, you're having to tug at a little bit, it's no big deal to pull on that linen thread real hard. I don't like other threads because I don't like how it feels in my hand, to be honest. It's kind of weird, right? But if I'm pulling on something, if I'm doing something where I'm really pulling to get something put together finishing wise, I don't like using regular thread because I feel like it kind of hurts my fingers pulling it through there, which is just me. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, just not my preference. But I do like linen thread, always have. And I love the way linen thread acts. I like the fact that when I touch it with my hand, it kind of softens down and relaxes. It's a neat thing. And so we do carry the full line of Londonberry linen thread, which we are going to be doing some branching out. I promised you we would do Schwalm work. We are also doing some hardanger. I've got a little collaboration coming up with a good friend of mine, a really wonderful teacher, really fabulous teacher. You will love this. And the project is just beautiful. So it's her project, and I can't wait to show it to you. We're working out a few kinks, and I'm a little slow because it has a lot of irons in the fire. So we'll be using that linen thread for the hardanger too. And we use some of it on the Queen's sampler that we're sponsoring, that Stitch Along with Fiber Talk. I've got to get back to mine sometime. That might be my winter project. I might pull that out, stitch on that this winter, but I love it. So anyway, I'm rambling. That's welcome to YonderWays, which I should say that. So this is our video channel for Sassy Stitchery and YonderWays. And YonderWays is kind of our name that we use for our video sessions and our learning things, our online classes, all that good stuff. So synonymous with Sassy Stitchery, but it's a cool old Southern colloquialism over yonder, and also it's fun to say it's a combination of my last name and my husband's last name, Young and Ponder. So, and he was here today. I will tell you, he comes to the shop most days and does things for me. Bless his heart. We're building out a shipping area in our upstairs classroom area. We were taking a little chunk of that and creating a shipping area, which will be very mobile. If we ever need a big classroom space, we can just shift it around, move it out, take it down. It's everything we've ever built, we've built either on wheels or on these little pad things, like those furniture movers where they can just shift right down and out of the way. We knew from the beginning we would need to be very mobile. So he was here doing that, which we're excited about that. But we had lunch together today, and we sat outside and ate some food and felt like we were in heaven. It was the first time in months that we have done something like that. We, had our little mask on and ordered our food and just sat down outside in this shaded area, and it was just really a joy to be together outside and feel like a human. So we're still extremely cautious. I really don't go anywhere but home and here to the shop, and he doesn't really go anywhere except home and here to the shop and his other job. So he's gainfully employed in 2 jobs at least. And he does go ride his dirt bike sometimes, which is great. So we're pretty cautious, and we intend to be that way. And I will say that from a shop perspective, we will be closed to customers until July. And at the beginning of July, we will open up for appointment shopping. Unless something changes around and about. That's our plan. And we need to do that for a few reasons. We need to get comfortable with our layout and make sure there's enough space for you guys as you come in here. And, to be quite honest, we're just waiting to see what's happening out there too. Whether there's going to be, a resurgence of illness. We're a tourist area, and so we're pretty high risk for that to happen. So we're still keeping our heads down, and I know a lot of you guys are too, and we appreciate everybody who's essential, who's frontline, and everybody who's staying home for the safety of all of us. This will come out around Memorial Day, and it's a weird Memorial Day, right? Because we're all kind of at home for the most part. We had a couple things going on. I did a little Blackbird stitch along, or I wanted to see your whips and your finishes of Blackbird, because the Beatles, they did a remastering of Yellow Submarine 3-4 weeks ago, and I got to watch that here at the shop, a little bit of it while I was working on a Saturday or a Sunday, and I started Yellow Submarine. And so I appreciate all the posts you guys have put out there. I will do a little tally and figure out who our little prize winners are. So by the time you see this, we will have identified those prize winners. So thank you, everybody who played along with that. That was a ton of fun. And then I wanted to show you what my start for Memorial Day is going to be. I had my dad and 4 of his brothers, so there were 5 of them were in World War II together. There were only 6 boys in the family, so 5 of the 6 went to war, and one of them was too young. He was only, I think he was 14 or 15, somewhere in there, and so he was too young. I think my dad might have been too young when he went. He might have, and maybe 1 or 2 of the others that went might have told a few stories to get in. I can't remember the details now, and they're sadly all gone. So a couple years ago, we lost the last one. They were just fantastic humans. And, when I hear people say the greatest generation, I know what they mean, because my dad and his brothers were amazing men. And they all came home. They all lived happy, long lives. Most of them lived to be in their 80s or 90s. One of them died in his 70s, early 70s. But they all had really long, happy, healthy lives with families and were contributing members of society. My dad was the first treasurer for our town of Woodfin, which is just up the street where I was born, and it's where our shop will ultimately reside, in our little folk Victorian house. But that town incorporated, and to keep from being consumed by Asheville, which is the city beside us. And my dad was the first treasurer there. Most of them were mailmen. So I think like 4 of the 5 were postal workers. And they all had routes. My dad was outside. He had a walking route in a really beautiful part of Asheville over in the historic area. And near the Grove Park Inn was his route. And they were just really neat people. So we do have that. But I spent a lot of time with my uncles. And I got some of their stories. My dad was in Guam and some places in Africa. He was a Marine. My Uncle Joe was a Marine. He was an MP. He was at the beaches. He was in the beaches of Normandy. So he was there on D-Day. My Uncle Hamp helped to liberate Italy. My Uncle Butch was in the Army, and I don't know exactly where he was stationed. And then my Uncle Bo was in the Navy. And I heard a really cool story one time that my dad ran into my Uncle Bo and one of his other brothers on leave. Somehow I don't know how that even happened back then, right? Because how do you even know where people are? But so here you've got 3 brothers who ran into each other on leave somewhere, which was just really, really pretty cool. But I will tell you one neat story about my Uncle Hamp. And he told me this story when he was in his 80s. And my uncle was blind by this point, and my aunt was deaf. and they lived together by themselves. And so while I was there with my dad to visit them, my uncle had me get out his memorabilia book. A lot of the soldiers had them. My dad had one too. And he wanted to tell me stories. And I would turn the page, and I would tell him what page I was on, and he knew who was in each picture. He's blind. And he's in his late 70s, early 80s. I think he might have been in his 80s. And he could tell me the name of each person in that picture. And it was his war buddies. Really pretty cool. And so we were looking through the book. And he had me take this picture out of the book. And it was a picture of he and my aunt together, I think it was. And on the back was a code. It was a name. It was a person's name. And so it was a person's name, and that name then equated to a country. And so it might have been like April, and it might have been Africa, or, Bo, and it might have been whatever. You know what I mean? I can't remember it all now, but it was just so cool. I wish I had taken a picture of it, but it predated cell phones, and so I don't have a picture of that. And this was a man who, by the way, had 2 Purple Hearts. So he came home with 2 Purple Hearts from war, and I just thought that was the neatest story. And so this picture was, my aunt had the picture, right? And then when he would write her letters, he would use this code to let her know basically what country he was in. Nothing more than that. So it wasn't anything that could get anybody hurt. But, so that she would have some idea where he was and that he was safe. And just really neat. So these were great men. They used to gather at my dad's house, my house, when I was a kid on Saturday afternoons, and they would bring a watermelon from the farmer's market, or 2 or 3, depending on how many people we had. We would all sit around and eat watermelon together. And it was always like at least 3 of the brothers, and sometimes more. So this Memorial Day, for that great big lead in, I got a pattern in that I looked at and I just fell in love with. And I decided I'm going to stitch this in memorial of my uncles and cousins who were in World War II together. And it's called Flanders Field, and it's a Biscornu from Heartstring Samplery. And I love this Biscornu. It's beautiful, beautiful. And if you don't know the story of Flanders Field, it's noted on the back here for you. And so you get to learn a little bit about it. Beth, who owns Heartstring Sampleries, gives you some of the detail, and you can certainly look it up. There's a beautiful poem that has come to represent the people who were lost during wars, foreign wars. And as I mentioned, none of my uncles or my dad were. They all got to come home, but they're all gone now. And they certainly lost a lot of friends over there. And the fact that they all came home was just a miracle. So this is going to be my Memorial Day stitch. I'm going to start this and just remember my uncles when I stitch it. And, I might even try to add some names or initials. And the other cool thing about my uncles is that they each had a nickname. And my dad's nickname was Snuffy. And I always thought it was because I don't know, maybe he, dipped snuff or something like that. And I found out when he died of Alzheimer's. And when he got sick, I found out that it was because he used to draw Snuffy Smith, a little cartoon character, all the time when he was a kid. And he was good at it. Even in his late 80s, he sat down and started drawing Snuffy Smith again for us. And it was perfect. I was like, okay, I get it now. So my dad's nickname was Snuffy. My Uncle Bo's nickname was Bo. His actual name was John Calvin. And I found out his real name when I went to a new church. And walking out, down south here and probably everywhere, ministers will shake your hand and they're like, hey, you tell them who you are and where you're from. And they're like, hey, are you related to so-and-so? And so he said, oh, are you related to John Calvin Young? And I was like, I don't know anybody by that name. And I went home and mentioned it to my dad. He was like, that's your Uncle Bo. I was like, oh, okay. So there was Uncle Bo, and there was Uncle Hamp, and his name was Hamilton, Delano Young, and Uncle Butch, whose name was Thomas Loyal. And the reason his nickname was Butch is because he ran after my Uncle Hamp when they were young men with a butcher's knife for something. Who knows? But, he got the name Butch from that. And then there was Uncle Hunky, who was my Uncle Joe. And I mostly called him Uncle Joe. And his name was Joe Henry. He was named after my grandfather. But he got the name Hunky because he was really good looking. And so back in the 40s, that was a name for, a really good looking guy. And so he went by Hunky. And so my older cousins all called him Uncle Hunky, which that's kind of cool. And let's see, who else was there? That might have been all of them. So there was Bo, Snuffy, Hunky, Hamp, and Butch. So that's the 5. And then my other uncle's name, who wasn't in the war, was Rooney, was his nickname. And his real name was Harold. So I don't know how he got the name Rooney. He was the youngest, and he was the last one to pass away. He just passed away 3 years ago. So anyway, just a lot of fun, and I hope that for this Memorial Day, you remember the people who are gone, whether they died at war, which we appreciate those sacrifices. But every man who went over there, especially in World War II, any war actually, they're almost all volunteers. World War II had a draft, but none of my uncles or my dad were drafted. They all volunteered and enlisted because, well, they knew they would get drafted, but it was a very patriotic thing to do. And today, certainly we don't have the draft. And so everybody who has gone has taken that risk of ultimate sacrifice. And so we appreciate all of them. And I know that it's not Veterans Day, and Veterans Day is the day that we hold to celebrate our heroes who are home. But for the ones who are gone, whether they died there or they died after they got back, Memorial Day for me is the day to remember them. So, this is me for Memorial Day. And if you want to join me, I took a little picture before I started all this of the linen. It's on 36 count Confederate gray from Weeks Dye Works Zweigart. Well, we had it dyed on a Zweigart base for us. But you can find Confederate gray on the regular Weeks, or on some places will have it on the Zweigart base. But this is the Weeks Dye Works. Also is the thread that's called for with it. And this is the color palette. And it's just beautiful. So you'll see me stitch it. I'll show you the finish for it. I like finishing with Scornews. I know a lot of people, it's interesting because I have a lot of people who say to me, I've never finished a Biscornu. And it surprises me because they're really pretty easy. I think they look intimidating, but they're not hard. So that's my Memorial Day start. I'm back. I had to step away for a minute. I was talking to a friend of mine who is one of the owners of Dying to Stitch in Virginia Beach. And if you've never been to their shop and you're ever in that area, that's a must-see shop. So you really have to stop and check out Dying to Stitch. I love them, and I'm sure most of you out there have been there at some point. But if not, go see Dying to Stitch. They're great. Pat and Ann own that shop, and they have a beautiful shop. There's a shop I want to be when I grow up. They're kind of my shop mentors, and I just think they're fantastic. And they also own R&R Fabrics. So they are a linen dyer, and they do beautiful fabrics, beautiful linen. So we were having a little chat about banding. So that was fun. So I rambled on there for quite a while about my Memorial Day start. I hope you find something to stitch that you enjoy. I wanted to talk to you, just one thing I want to talk to you about that's very serious is this Morgan locking hoop. And we've had a lot of orders come in for this. Sorry about that. The video stopped. So let's start with this Morgan hoop again. I want to show it to you. It has a divot that runs through one hoop, and then it has a kind of a little protrusion, you see it here, that runs on the other hoop. And they fit together, and they make a very tight fit for your fabric. I do not sell these to people for stitching on linen unless they're doing embroidery and they're not going to move it around. And so that's what I want you to know about this hoop. This hoop is perfect, and it is essential for punch needle unless you're using a slate frame or something like that you have a really tight fit on. But this provides you a really nice tight fit for punch needle. But you have to get a hoop that's the size of your project. You want it to fit inside the hoop. You don't move this hoop around on your project. So you can use this hoop for punch needle. You can use it for embroidery if it fits inside. You would never use this hoop on something that you have to move it around the linen on, because you're going to have a really bad divot in that linen. Really bad. Hard to get out, kind of bad. Not to say that you can't, but it's tough. And so if we have people buying this hoop in here, I always ask them, if I don't know already, most of the time I already know because we've been talking, but if I don't know why they're buying this hoop, say they've been working with somebody else and I catch them at the register and I'm ringing them out, I'll ask them what they're using it for. And if it's not punch needle or if it's not embroidery that I know is going to fit in the center, then I'll walk them right back and get them a different hoop, because this hoop is not good for stitching, cross stitching, or something like that where you've got to move the linen around or the fabric. You're going to have a bad divot that you're just going to be impossible to get out. Having said that, it's fantastic for punch needle, and it's required pretty much. When we teach punch needle here, you have to have a hoop, not this size necessarily. We usually do a 7-inch, but you have to buy this hoop or come in with one. We won't let you take that class if you don't have a locking hoop. So it's essential for punch needle. It's acceptable for embroidery, like, whatever kind of design you might truly be doing, a hand embroidery design, if it fits within the hoop parameters. But if you're doing like a quilt that you've got embroidery on and you're moving this around, this is not the one. So I just want you to be conscious of that, because we've seen a lot of them go out the door, and I know that people are excited about the product, but make sure that you understand what its limitations are. And the limitation of this is also its big plus. It's a locking hoop. It locks down on that fabric and it will leave a divot. And you need that for punch needle. And if you're doing embroidery, it's okay. And, I've seen some people using it for some other things, and it's perfectly okay to use if whatever you're doing it for fits in the middle and you're not having to move this around your ground cloth. So we love it when you buy them. I think they're great, but just make sure you're buying them for the right reason. That's my tidbit for the day. I wanted to talk to you about Hollandaise Marclop. So if you watch the Jeanette Douglas Trunk Show, the second video, I announced the birthday stitch along that I wanted to do with this one. I love it. I have had no secret about that. And I talked to Jeanette Douglas, and she is putting together the thread kits for us. So we've got a product out there for you where you can order the kit for this, which would include the 32 count light mocha linen and the thread kit. The thread kit, I'll tell you what it's got in it. It's got some Gloriana threads, Silken Colors by the Thread Gatherer, Soie d'Alger, Classic Colorworks Silk, which is Belle Soie, and Needlepoint Ink Silk. There's no embellishments on here. It's just beautiful thread. So I think if you want yours to look like this, you'll have to use that kit. There are no alternatives given here for like a DMC conversion or anything. It's possible once I get that full line of Cosmo in that I can make some conversions for you with the Cosmo and or the DMC. So maybe I might be able to do that, but let's not plan on that. If you want to stitch this and you want it to look like this, then I would buy the silk kit for it. It's a great bargain when you consider what you're getting in it and the fact that you're not having to pay for full skeins. So I'll leave that up to you. But just know that it's out there for you. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to do it. I will certainly, Jeanette gives fabulous stitch diagrams, but this is one that as I do some of the specialty stitches, I'll certainly do some videos of those to help you along with those if you need it. So Hollandaise Marclop, it's out there for you if you decide you want to join us for August. We don't have the thread kits in yet, so you're basically doing a pre-order for the threads if you're watching this in May when I film it, but we should have them some point relatively soon, and we'll get those sent out to you. So let's talk about modern folk embroidery. So you see the 2018 stitch along behind me. I love that one, and if you look at that one, we've got that one for sale online. It's monochromatic, so it's all one color. And I mentioned in our last video that Allie just used her little bits and pieces and made this beautiful design. So I will show you a close-up of it before we finish this little chat. And it took us a while to find the time to sit down and match it because she had no idea what she used. But we did that and we posted that for you. So it's posted out there under the product for the 2018 stitch along. So if you decide you want to stitch it in something that looks kind of like that, then you can find that posted online. So that's a beautiful option for you. Well, Jacob de Graaf is the designer for Modern Folk Embroidery, and he is just fantastic. He's done a lot of original design. He's also done some reproductions, and we have, if we don't have everything, it's just because we don't have it loaded online, but we are able to, I think, sell you pretty much anything of his. So I want to share with you what I'm going to start sometime soon. I have to finish Mabel Teak first, but I really desperately want to do his 2020 stitch along, and this is the image of it. And I've got some friends who, we're only through part five right now, and I've got friends who've stitched it, and they're using all kinds of beautiful colors. So one of them is using I forget what the color is. I think she's using a lakeside color like cedar plank, which I love. It's similar to Confederate Gray from Weeks Dye Works, and some I think she's using either a Belle Soie or a Dinky Dye over-dyed silk, and it's kind of a tone on tone. It's just really beautiful. I've got another friend who's using Gentle Arts Midnight, and I think she had some fabric from her stash that she's stitching on, but it's also very beautiful. So it's a deep dark blue. I really like the red, and so I'm going to be using this corn tassel 37 count, which was one of the options that I gave to our folks with this dark red. And so maybe in the next week or so I'll get this one started and I'll show it to you. And I want to catch up with these guys. I just love it. This needlepoint ink silk is number 503 is what this one is. And it's one of my favorite reds. I just really, 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 really love it. And you can see it's just gorgeous on this corn tassel. And this is a Legacy Linen corn tassel. We did just get a bunch of new colors in from Legacy Linen. I didn't have time to get them ready to talk to you about them here. That's mean teasing it. But in a video coming up soon, I'll show you all those fabrics. They're really pretty. So that's what a lot of people are stitching right now. We do have kits out there for this, if you decide you want to do that. One of the ones that's been really popular right now with the people having to stay at home is this one. And it's a Jane Austen sampler. It's called Real Comfort. And it says, there is nothing like staying at home for real comfort. And so I've seen a lot of people stitching this one. We've certainly sold a lot of them. But that's a really nice one from Modern Folk Embroidery. Very appropriate for the time. There's a lot of neat things that you could do with that one. So the little houses are great. This one is one that I have been working on for a while and just need to finish it. But it's called a Winter Garden. And I'm doing this one in wools, actually, from Gentle Art, and a deep blue wool from Gentle Art, and it's just beautiful. So, and it's one that is, each corner is kind of the same. It's kind of like, it's very, I don't know what you call that, but this quadrant is the same as the other three quadrants. And so you just kind of turn the pattern. But I've really enjoyed stitching that. And I didn't bring it in today. I actually couldn't find it. So this is a new one that he came out with last year, which I really love. It's a countdown for Christmas called I'll Be Home for Christmas, an advent calendar. I just really love it. I actually really like it on this gray fabric. I just think it's beautiful. And so we've got some great grays that you could do this on if you decided you wanted to do it. There's some Legacy Linen grays that are really pretty that this would work on. It would work really nice on a 30 count Parisian gray, which we have a lot of that in stock now. There's some other ones that would be really pretty on, but you could do it on anything. That just gives it a nice night sky. It would also be really pretty on one of the Picture This Pluses. So that's one of my favorites. This is another one of my favorites, an Irish Quaker sampler, and I love this one. So I think it's just beautiful. This is one that I want to stitch that I haven't stitched yet. And I'm going to insert one of Allie's pictures of one that she did. I think it was it might have been a 2017 Sal. I can't remember now which one it was. But I will insert it for you so that you can see it. This is a newer one called Love Thy Neighbor. And this is another great one to stitch during the pandemic. It's also Quaker. But I thought this one was really pretty. This is an original design. So, another really nice one to help us remember to take care of our friends. This one is one of my all-time favorites, and it's a new one. It's a reproduction. I love how he put the image on here, and I can't wait to stitch this one. And he did something really cool with it. So this one's called, and I'm going to say the last name wrong, Mary Wareet. I'm sure I said that wrong. So I love that he put the picture of the antique there, because you can see how he found it. Right, it's still attached to its little backing board. And this one's in really good shape for an antique. This is one of the better attachments of an antique that I've seen. Now, this original antique is over 1, and so he decided, kind of like we did for one of the ones for Elizabeth Cooper that we put out, we did an alternate version with it over 2. So he did the same thing. He did an alternate version with this over 2. And this verse that's on here is from Psalms. And so it says, the paths of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day. And that's from Psalms. And I'm just going to get this on here so I can tell you what it is. So that is from Psalms 4:18, that verse. And so on the over 2, because clearly you have more room that you have to do something with there, he switched the verse out and he pulled a verse from John, and it's John 1:5. And it says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And I just thought that's perfect for right now. Really, really perfect. And so I'm going to stitch this as, one of my pandemic memorials. And I'm going to use that other verse. I'm going to stitch it over 2 and use the other verse. So when you buy this chart, you get 2 options. You get the original over 1 option, and then you get the over 2 option. And the over 2 option has the alternate verse, which again, I'll read it to you again, is John 1:5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So I thought that's great. And he did some research on her, and he found out a little information about where she might be from. Sometimes it's hard to narrow it down exactly. So, and that was the case with this one. He can't say with, definity, but he got it pretty close. And it's charted with DMCs. And I think all of his samplers are charted with DMCs. And even this one, if you wanted to do it, we gave 2 options with this one. You can do it with needlepoint ink on the 37 count, because you just have to use 1 strand. Or if you want to do it on a larger count linen, so like a 30 count, we offered a 30 count option, 2 of them actually, with sulky threads, and you could do it with sulky threads. There's a lot of different colors in sulky, so you can pick it. We also have the full line of floche. So if you want to stitch this in floche, you could do that, but to stitch with floche, you need to be on, a 30-32 count. Floche is thick, and it's not going to work too well on a 37 count. The skeins of floche are big. You get a lot of thread on there. It's a single strand thread. And we, like I said, we do have the full line. So you could do it with that. It's a really soft thread. It's nice. I'm stitching Anya Stay with that. But for this one, you could do it, or you could use sulky. Sulky's fun and easy to get for us, and beautiful thread. It's about the size of pearl number 12. So I went through those pretty quick. There are a ton of modern folk embroidery charts available, just a ton. I wish I had more models finished. I just need to stitch more and stitch faster. So I would encourage you guys to go post your modern folk embroidery finishes. So you can post them on our Instagram page. You can post them on our Sassy Jacks page. And if you want to get out there and post your modern folk embroidery finishes between now and, let's say, the end of June, because we're sitting right around Memorial Day. So if you want to get out there and post us your whips and your finishes from modern folk embroidery between now and the end of June, we'll do a little drawing for you for June. And we'll give you a little gift there too. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope you guys post a bunch of them. And thank you for watching again. If you enjoy our videos and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to us. And if you want to get notified when we put something new out there, you can click on the bell and it will notify you. We do have some new needlepoint videos going up to get our class going with the beginning needlepoint. And we also have the next version of our learning stitches. We're on number 7 now, so that'll be coming through. That's not even halfway yet, so you can still join that. And we still have a lot of people joining in for that. So the response to that has been fantastic. We'll make sure that we do something every year that is, accessible to you from wherever you are. So I really appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for supporting our shop, for supporting all of our shops, and for, just being patient with us as we work through everything related to this pandemic. We do expect to open back up in July by appointment. And we'll see how we go from there. We do expect to have our classes as scheduled for the rest of the year. We have figured out how to how to make sure that they're distant from each other. And we figured out how to run our shop, and that's all assuming that we don't have any drastic changes in how the recovery through the pandemic is going. So I've enjoyed my time with you. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a fantastic week and weekend whenever you see this, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.